Okay, here we go. Okay, so hello and a very warm welcome to this Explain Pain in the Clinic. My name is Joanna Taylor and I am the Director of NOI in Europe. And I'm joined this morning by my very good friend and Principal NOI Teacher Tim Beames. Good morning, Tim.
Morning.
Tim has been a NOI teacher for well over 15 years. He has taught literally hundreds of Explain Pain courses to thousands of clinicians all over the world. Tim is an active clinician himself, specialising in complex and persistent pain. He is also the founder of Pub Scientifique, which is an online platform for clinicians to learn about the latest discoveries and developments in clinical practice and pain research directly from the researchers and pain specialists. Tim, would you mind just popping the link to Le Pub Scientifique in the chat, please? It's a great platform and it has a really good podcast that's released every couple of weeks that's free, and there's paid stuff on there too. Do go and check it out if you haven't already, it's brilliant. Tim is also co-author of the Graded Motor Imagery Handbook along with David Butler and Lorimer Moseley. We're actually going to be doing a GMI focused live session next time, which I actually think is next week, isn't it, Tim, because of half term in the UK. So we'll keep your eyes open for that because it'll be great. It'll be an intro to GMI and some handy things to take away with you. Okay, we'll let you know about that. So these sessions are all about giving you either an introduction to Explain Pain. If you haven't done the course already, these sessions act as a really good introduction to the methodology, to the kinds of things that are covered in the courses. We just sort of skim over the top of most of it in these short sessions here, but obviously in the courses, they go into a lot more depth. So this just gives you a flavour. And if you have already done a course, then these lives are very much designed to keep us in touch with you after you've done a full course with Tim. It will help you to refresh what you've learned, just to revise it, but also just to keep that contact between us and you. And another way to stay in touch with us is via the NOI Clinical Discussion Group, which is a Facebook group, which is absolutely brilliant. There's over 2,000 clinicians in there now. And people just go in there, you know, they share ideas, stories, that kind of thing. And there's some of the NOI teachers in there who can answer questions, but we're not really there to answer clinical scenario questions, but we'll definitely comment or, you know, give you our thoughts about things. So do come over and join that. I'll drop the link to the clinical discussion group into the chat after I've done the intro. And then a lot of people aren't on Facebook. So for that reason, we created a YouTube channel for these clinical discussions. And I'll drop the link to that into the chat as well. Do come and subscribe to that channel because all these videos that Tim and I do and the other teachers do, they're uploaded onto the YouTube channel. So you can go back and look at the catalogue of topics that we've covered. And actually there's a lot now, you know, there's absolutely loads of content. So for some specific you're interested in, there'll be a video on that topic. So we'll drop those links into the chat throughout the session. So please come over, join us and subscribe. Just a couple of things before we start. We're going to be talking for about 20 minutes. If you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A and we'll get to as many of them as we can. And as I said before, the recording of this will be in the YouTube channel. You will also receive an email following up with a link directly to it. So don't worry, you won't miss it. We will let you know in several different ways where to find the recording. So today, Tim and I are going to be talking about the role of how to explain to patients what makes acute pain become chronic. So this is the third part of a series where we've been looking about the factors at play when pain goes from acute to chronic. So Tim, where do you want to kick off with this subject? I'm excited for this, by the way.
Yeah,
I've
and
got
now
lots of
then
questions.
now that you're saying that, originally we were like, oh, let's do one part, and then we thought, no, three's enough. And now I'm thinking maybe we need to add some more because
Oh my God.
yeah,
Okay.
because well, we're not like it's such an important topic, isn't it? And yeah, so just positioning ourselves and where we've been before. For those of you, if you've not listened, we talked first about the more biological side of things, and we talked about if you want the strengthening of communication links within us, within the neuroimmune system, and then we sort of dipped our toes into the behavioral side of things as well. Not so much, perhaps we could explore that a bit further, and we've sort of centered our attention more at mechanistic explanations at a peripheral level and in the brain, haven't we? So so that's the sort of forerunner, and then why is it important? Well, the first thing, well, that's the first question I've got in my head anyway. Sorry, Joe. So the first thing is that I mean, every single person that I see has persistent pain. So they've had pain. They've all in the past recovered from pain. So it's a possibility for them, but this time, for whatever reason, pain stuck around, and there's a number of issues with that. And we were just talking off air, weren't we? We were saying so from a societal perspective, there's problems with that because people get stigmatized. They, I mean, there's even terminology out there of malingerers, for instance, like you're putting it on, you're putting it on. I mean, even that is another expression in English, isn't it? That someone's doing it to get, drug seeking or whatever it is, and then so there's problems out there societally, I think, in people's understanding of chronic pain. I
Mm,
don't like the word chronic even. Ongoing or persistent or what, I mean, chronic often sounds like it's never going to go as well. And then there's these sort of prevailing ideas around pain that's carrying on, and that's even fueled by some of the rubbish knowledge out there, that can be unhelpful, that someone's weak, broken, and there's a few different sort of ways of that we understand this is that there's power in our language that can
mm,
move someone into that place as well. So by telling someone, I don't know, someone's got poor posture, it's your bad posture, or you've got degeneration of the spine, and it's like there's kind of like no coming back from that, isn't there? It's like
mm.
it's real like this. It's like here you go. Here's doom being laden onto you. So I don't think that. I mean, one of the things is we've got to recognize when that is the case. That might, telling someone they've got poor posture and them going away and working on it, taking agency
Mm,
back and working on it. Look, there will be times when that message falls well. I totally get that, but often what we hear is it doesn't. Um, and then like what comes from that, there's this fueling of self-blame and worthlessness, which I don't think is helpful in a recovery process. If you're constantly thinking it's my fault, I wish I shouldn't have done that, and what now, and I mean that's not helpful going forward. Um so so I know that's like a bit, and maybe that's for us to have spend some time thinking about. So
But that is very much, sorry, Tim, can I just say that is very much, that is one of the biggest clinical challenges that that our audience tell us about. When they join the clinical discussion group, we ask them the question, what's your biggest clinical challenge? And that is in the top three of the biggest clinical challenges, is
mm,
that how to reverse or to flip those negative connotations that they come to you with those because they've either been told it by other healthcare professionals or just the world at large, these sort of, these words. So it's really important just to highlight that.
yeah. And I think we have done a session where we've been talking about the notion of pain typically being thought of as a sort of an attack on us, and that we're in
Mm.
a war with our pain, and that sort of proliferated through the notion of things like painkillers. I mean,
Yes.
even the terminology is not great, is it? Maybe pain dampeners would have been, or calmers might have been a nicer thing to come up with originally.
Mm.
And we've even so a part of a reframing process would be reframing if someone does see pain as an attack on them, of being able to sort of shift that perspective and seeing actually that pain usually serves a protective um,
Mm.
response, so can be helpful for them. And the phrases that we might typically use are the shift from threat and danger towards safety and protection, and if we can get really get that into that person, then it can help move things forward.
Mm.
Coming back to educating, well, there's a story that we've used for years and years. Dave and Lorimer had, in fact, they called it the orchestra in the brain. You'll have heard this, Joe, loads of times. But I like the idea of a pain tune. And I played in bands and things and orchestras when I was younger, so it sort of resonates with me that you got given a piece of music. Maybe you've never seen it before, but you might have heard the music, but you've never tried to play it, and now you're playing it and you rehearse it. And to begin with, you're not great at it, you're not accurate, and you rehearse it more and more and more, and you get so good that actually you can just play it in your head.
Mm.
And you notice yourself singing it in the car when you're driving to work, or when you're in the shower in the morning, and we think pain is a little bit like that as well. In fact, we talked about the processes of learning and memory being very similar, or being connected with the process of the transitioning of acute to chronic pain.
Mm.
So that analogy or metaphor, pain being like a pain tune, or pain as a pain tune, and the analogy that we're bringing together this sort of richer story that can make sense to someone, because that's what we see in pain, is that someone experiences pain, and to begin with, they might experience it fairly sporadically, or fairly predictably related to certain activities they do, a bit like us predictably rehearsing the tune that we're trying to learn, the pain tune. But then as they get better and better, as they played it more and more, then you start noticing it at completely random times as well, and you do hear that. And the beauty of a story like this is that we can put someone in their own story. So if someone tells you, I notice it, when I'm having a shower, or when I'm driving to work, or when I'm sitting just watching TV at night, it can just come on randomly. Then a story like that can position them into that story. So that's
Mm.
one way that I might be offering their knowledge in their own experience back to them. But there are a couple of other ways as well. We talked about this off air, didn't we?
Yes.
And I mean, it depends on the person in front of you where you go, but there's things like something that I'm often talking about with my patients is about a self-fulfilling prophecy. If the only choice you have is that you will be in pain, you're always going to be in pain. And the example I gave you off air was, if you've got a pack of cards, ordinarily you've got 52 different cards. If you choose one card, the chances of it being a ace of hearts is 1 in
Mm.
52. So, it's a pretty small chance, isn't it? But it's like your pack of cards is now only a pack of ace of hearts, so the chance of you pulling pulling an ace of heart is 100%, is absolute. And that's a bit like what happens with pain for some people. The chance of me being in pain, absolute. In fact, there's no chance of it being anything else. The possibilities of me experiencing something else is zero. And
Mm.
the reason I want to use this story is, like what I really am focusing on with my patients is trying to bring back possibilities for something different. So
Yeah.
could we put a few aces of spades and a couple of jacks in there, and so that now realistically, when pain has become chronic over a long period of time, you're not going to suddenly magically just switch off and, and the pain has gone. That could happen,
Mm.
but it's very rare. But what's more common is that it, instead of pain being the only option for you, you might find that you have, and we talk about this on an Explain Pain course. Instead of it being your pain tune, it might be the jazz version of your pain tune.
Mm.
So it might just be a little bit different, or it might last a little bit less time, or you might be able to do more before you notice it. And it's in essence what we're doing is we're opening up some possibilities, opportunities to do other things in your life. And so much of what we hear with people who've had pain for a long period of time is pain has taken agency over them. They're
Mm.
no longer in control of their life. It's the pain that dictates what they can and they can't do. So
Mm.
offering up, and then that to me is like, oh, okay, so now where can we find opportunities? Where can we find those possibilities?
Mm.
That's another story, but I wanted to, can I drop into another one? Because, and this is really relevant for just working literally this week with people. But I found myself, I was telling my wife earlier, but I found myself you dropping in this notion, and it was around, it was in the recover group, so the guys with pelvic pain. This is the first time it came up this week, and we were talking about hope and opportunities and looking for wins, and I just dropped in the notion of happy hormones. And Dave talked about this years and years ago about your happy hormones. And so for those of you who are unfamiliar with this, it's the endogenous, it's the naturally occurring hormones in your body that we typically associate with your good things, laughter, love, social bonding, those sorts of things, like oxytocin, serotonin, dopamine, endorphins. And I dropped in this notion. I was like, well, you do realize, when you're having a good time, you get your happy hormones flowing, and they're the same chemicals that the drugs that you're currently on are trying to stimulate as well. So
Mm.
you have things like your serotonin reuptake inhibitors, and you have your opiates as well. And so they're all the same, those drugs, the big pharma are trying to recruit your own hormonal system. They're trying to get you to work more effectively. What better way than to get yourself, to stimulating those hormones as
Mm.
well. And the
Mm.
reason I bring this up now is that was like penny dropped moment for these guys, and they were like, oh really, it's what we have this in us, we have the ability in us. And sometimes it's those you don't know, because you're sort of trying to offer up a number of different alternatives and opportunities, but you don't know which message sort of drops well. And that
Mm.
one this week dropped beautifully, and then I used it the next day with someone else. I think because I was just primed from the day before, and again it was like, wow. And it's like and now the way I reflected on it is I'm thinking it's given them the sense that they have control, they have some agency. So
Mm.
can I regain control back into my life?
Mm. Okay, that's great. Oh, it's just so much. So much.
Well,
Okay,
yeah,
right.
I
But
mean
what
that's
I'm going to do, Tim, is I'm going
oh,
to bring you back round, because the title of this session was, with this is the third part in the series of acute pain becoming chronic, and we looked at the neurobiology and brain plasticity and the changes, the physical changes going on in the body. And then what we were, so what I would just like to talk about is, how do you actually, if you have a patient in front of you, you said this a couple of minutes ago, if you have this person in front of you, where do you start with explaining simply in terms that that person can understand that process that's got them in this position of being sat in front of you as a chronic, I know we don't like that word, but as a persistent pain patient? How do you explain what's happened to them?
Yeah, well, schematically, I've got a sort of pathway in my mind that I'm working towards. And the first thing
Yeah.
is I'm asking someone to open up their sort of reflective piece, a reflective process. So, tell me a little more, or I'm just asking and probing. I'm asking questions about things, and really that's a way to sort of open them up and open their interest and understanding up. So that's the sort of first place that I would be starting, and then I might be looking for alternatives. So it might be those possibilities where things have been different. And I might be, and we recorded a piece on disruption, didn't we? I might be asking them to look for periods of time, or introduce new activities that create some sort of disruption to the norm. So in other words, that instead of the self-fulfilling prophecy continuing, that we disrupt that pattern and we just create opportunities for something slightly different. So, they might be, I mean, quite simply, they might be, I've got a guy that I'm thinking about where the timing of having a shower in the morning was enough of a disruption that he suddenly realized, oh, wow, I can have it at a different time. And in fact, having my shower at a different time meant that I had a little more energy for my morning. And actually, I was able to get to lunchtime and feel better than I ordinarily have been. So that allowed him to then look back and reflect back on, I've taken this measure, I've tried this thing, and actually it's been a bit successful. I'm more likely to do again. And we've in fact, we've done a lot of talking, haven't we, in the past, but we've talked about things like creating habit forming. Why would someone bother to do something again when there's been no evidence of change? And that's we all have this, don't we? What we all know, that eating healthily, doing exercise, getting the right sleep, all of those things are good for us, but we don't all do them all the time. And it's the same process within therapies as well, is that we have all this knowledge and understanding of things that could help someone, could move them into a healthier place. It doesn't immediately switch their pain off, but it could just create the conditions for things like healing. But we don't always engage in them. So that ability to be able to self-reflect and see how that process has gone is important.
Just the sort of the steps that you just talked about there, I know that you get that in the course, that this is one of the main focuses for the course, is actually taking clinicians through this pathway of presenting this to the patient. One thing, there's a really interesting comment in the chat there, Tim, from Kate Harding. She said that would that suggest that the transition from acute to chronic is at least in part related to a sense of loss of control?
I think that is the case for some people. I don't know whether it's everybody, but yes, I would say that's definitely some people. Yeah. And it's a lovely, thanks, Kate. That's a great reflection, coming back to what we're talking about. There's different ways of us viewing that as well, and there's, because I'm an activist at heart. I know you don't like me talking about this, but a part of inactivism is the way that we see how we can act, and the ability for us to be able to act in our world is dictated upon by our bodies, but also by the environment. So our environment affords action and our bodies afford action. And I think some of that is in two different ways, in a completely dynamic way are shifting and change. So the possibilities available to you to do stuff in your world has become limited for different reasons. And yeah, so the idea of a loss of control or
Mm.
losing agency, I mean, the other phrases people talk about, external locus of control, you know, that someone else is in control and does things for us, and they are typically things that you see within the pain literature. That's something that we're trying to give back to someone.
Yeah,
At a
super interesting.
societal level, sorry about this, but at a societal level, you know, medicine, it's got a lot, you know, there's a lot of good that has happened in the last 100 years. But the bad stuff is that whilst we have gained knowledge in how we can improve longevity, for instance, what we're not doing very well is improving health into later life, and the
Mm.
long-term conditions, including things like pain, are particularly poorly served by a more medicalized appreciation of, you know, a traditionally biomedical approach.
Mm.
So the way that systems are set up, I don't think are quite right necessarily for longer term health and well-being.
I've got probably a final question for you, and that is, it just completely skirts right back round to sort of where we started, which was, how important do you think it is to explain to a patient the mechanisms that we talked about in the previous two sessions, the biological mechanisms, why their pain has become persistent?
I don't think it is important, but I think for some people they want to know, and if that's the case, then you know, and if you have the knowledge and you can communicate that well, then that's part of your role with that person. But
Mm.
you know, if you look at Kate's question here about control, is that you can offer ways of giving, you know, regaining control without necessarily having to explain the neurobiology, for instance. So, yeah, I'm not wedded to that idea.
Mm.
For some people, it can be important, but
Okay.
yeah.
I've just got one final parting comment here, Tim. Do you have a favourite phrase that you use to describe acute pain becoming chronic to a patient in a very simplistic way? We
I
didn't rehearse this. I just wondered if you had one, because NOI have a few, don't they? Are there any that you use?
Yeah, I don't really. I just talk about pain being you know, persisting. Pain's persisting longer than we expected, and then we might, you know, why do you think it's persisted? And
Yeah.
like I just drop in some questions like that. People have phenomenally good knowledge of themselves, and
Mm.
we are robbing them often when we don't allow them to express that knowledge. So
I love that. I love, you know, just you saying that, just if I was your patient, I would think, oh, I am with the right person.
well, I hope that's what they do think. I mean,
Yeah, you instantly make me feel calm, and you instantly make me feel like you're interested in my personal experience just in those two sentences. Fantastic.
thanks very much.
That's why I love working with you, Tim. Love it. Okay, so we'll wrap up now, I think. Thank you very much for everybody that's joined live today, or if you're watching on the recording, thank you for taking the time to listen. This is to, just before we wrap up, as I said at the beginning, we sort of scratch the surface in these sessions of these topics. If you want to understand how these different sessions tie together in the complete Explain Pain curriculum and come away with that the complete set of tools to use Explain Pain in your clinic, then obviously we highly recommend you coming on an Explain Pain course. We have many people in the audience here and in our community who have done Explain Pain several times because they love coming back and refreshing and moving on and, you know, up leveling their practice. So if you are interested in doing an Explain Pain course, Tim, could you just very quickly tell us what courses you've got coming up and the difference between the two?
I'm starting a course tomorrow online. It's 4 parts, 2 this week, 2 next week, and that allows us to do the same reflective piece, learn a bit about pain, neurobiology of pain, and also put into place a couple of exercises that people can practice over the next week. So that's this course, and then we're running the winter school in November. It starts. The difference between a winter school and the online version is the online 4-part version is that it's a weekly thing. So we set a little exercise to do each week and reflect on that. I drop in some reading as well, so we talk about some of the current papers out there that just get us to understand pain in a more broader sense, and we engage as a group in that process as well. So we get some feedback about the exercises and the reading, and we also learn about pain and explaining pain as a process. I would say as a framework. Because I think it's bigger than a specific treatment approach, which often people come thinking that that's what they're doing. They're learning how to explain pain, but it's much, much bigger than that in my
It is, yeah. And what Tim hasn't said, of course, because he wouldn't, is that if you are interested in the winter school format, the 8-week format, is that you get to spend 8 weeks with Tim. Which is pretty cool. So you can go away, you can go and practice what you've learned, you can go and use it with your patients, you can come back, you can ask Tim what he thought, you can ask him questions, and you'll basically get 8 weeks of mentoring. So that is a very, very popular way to do the Explain Pain course if you feel like you need that little bit more, maybe nurturing and holding through the process. And the other thing about that one is the sessions are recorded. So again, it gives you the opportunity to rewatch and refresh and if you feel like that is a better learning style for you. So tickets are on sale now for winter school. What's that?
Time zones might mean that some people have joined the course, watched all of them, and actually not been able to do it live. But you can still get a lot from the experience. So we stay in touch, and I feedback your experiences as well to the group. So you are part of that, even if you can't join live.
Yeah, and also these sessions are a way to keep in touch with Tim like indefinitely. So if you are interested in winter school, we will be sending out the link to that with the email following this, with the link to this session to watch it again if you want, and we'll also send out the link to register for winter school. It's a very, very popular format. So okay, that's us done for today. And so it is actually going to be next week is the GMI course, because we're having to miss the week after with it being half-term holidays and kids off and stuff. So amazing. Thank you for joining live, and thank you for watching on catch up if you're watching on record. It's been fantastic once again. Thank you very much, Tim.
Thank you. Bye-bye.